Welcome to Conversations with Anne Elizabeth, the podcast inspired by my book, I'm a Registered Dietitian, Now What?, where I have the absolute joy to sit back, relax, and have a conversation about nutrition with a variety of people who share their personal story of passion and purpose, especially registered dietitians. Today's conversation is very special for me. I'm featuring Melissa Joy Dobbins, also known as the Guilt-Free RD, who has a passion for education through good communication of sound science, smart nutrition, and good food. When I transitioned from a clinical dietitian to a retail dietitian, there was a huge learning curve and a new and unknown aspect of my job I was completely unfamiliar with, and that was media. I remember when I learned I was going to provide nutrition communications via television, radio, and newspaper articles, I think I about fell over. As I got into doing more with media, I also stumbled upon a few videos of an Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics media spokesperson, and I started watching more of her work to learn more. We then connected through Midwest area a few years later, and I truly have been a fan ever since, following her great work and resources she provides her dietitian friends. Her Soundbites podcast inspired me to start my own, and I feel very lucky to have this connection and conversation with her. Please enjoy my conversation with Melissa Joy.
Enjoy your time. I had a phone call this morning with another podcaster because, as you know, I'm speaking at Fancy on podcasting. So yes. I'm interviewing people, and I know you're on our list, but I didn't get to interview you about just, your show and what learnings we can share with the Fancy attendees about podcasting.
That's going to be I think that's a great, I hope you guys have a lot of people come for that, because I think there's a lot of newer dietitians thinking about going into podcasting. So you'll be able to share a lot of great information.
Yeah, I hope so.
And I think it's great that you're interviewing other podcasters too, just to see everybody does things a little bit differently everywhere.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. And I have to tell you that that's what got me so excited about the session. Kate Agnew and Marie Ferguson from Dietitian Connection podcast, had reached out to me and said, hey, we want to submit a Fancy session. Would you do it with us? And they're just lovely people. I'm like, sure. And you know how it is. I'm like, I'm thinking probably won't get accepted. And then it did. And I was like, oh, wow, that's awesome. And, I had contributed to the submission and everything, but, just almost kind of, I don't want to say forgot about it, but just, you just got to move forward and keep going because very few sessions get selected at Fancy. So I was really surprised and excited when I got accepted. And, the areas that I get to focus on is so great because Kate gets to deal with all the technology and I'm like, have fun with that. I'm helping her, but it's just, as you know, it's a painful aspect of the whole podcasting world, especially in my podcasting world. But, I get to get into things like, how do you make it engaging and, some of the more branding, vision, monetizing aspects of it. And so I was just like, oh, goody. I'm going to talk to my friends and other podcasters and, find out what their secrets and struggles are and share that with the group. So that's the fun part for me.
And I think it's great when you do presenting at Fancy, you do get a buddy up with somebody that maybe has some different expertise, but has this under the same umbrella of a topic.
Yeah, it is really fun. I really like that aspect. It makes it a little challenging because most sessions are an hour and a half, I believe. So when you well, maybe they're an hour.
Did they change it?
No, it's an hour and a half. It's an hour and a half. Yeah. But so between the moderator, the person who kicks off the session and then the two speakers, and then time for Q&A, which, as you know, I'm a speaker coach, so I'm a stickler about do not go over time. Make sure there's plenty of time for Q&A. I know how hard that is, but you've got to do this. So you really have to be careful about how much time you have and how much you're trying to cover during that time because it goes fast.
It does go. I did present, but with two other people on dietitian careers, and I was so shocked how fast the time goes. It's
Yeah, if you really have 3 people talking, I mean, you're looking at maybe 20 minutes. I mean, that's nothing. Yes. So yeah, that's the biggest challenge, I think, sometimes is making, okay, you can't, just like with our patients and clients one-on-one, I can't give you everything I know about diabetes in an hour. No. And if I try to do that, it will not be a good session. Like it's not good for anybody.
No. And they leave with their eyes just like huge,
glazed over. Yeah. Like, what just happened?
What is the title of your session at Fancy?
It is podcasts. Tune into the perfect value add for dietitians.
And what day are you presenting?
It is Sunday. I believe that's the 21st. Sunday, 3:30 to 5.
Okay. Well, hopefully this is going to be released before Fancy. So definitely anyone listening, I hope they jump into your session because it's going to be a great one to attend.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, so we kind of talked about, what you're doing right now and your first child going to college, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
big changes around here, I think.
Yeah. I don't know. Is she going somewhere close?
Yeah, not too far. About 2.5, more likely 3 hours with traffic. So I feel like it's a good distance, not too far, not too close.
Yes. I always said I wanted to go like just enough that I could still bring laundry home.
See, I'm like, no. Well, so my mother lives in the town where she's going to school, which just happens to kind of be a coincidence. But so I told my mom, especially the first semester, she's not doing laundry at your house on the weekend. She's not hanging at your house all weekend. She's got to stay there and put her roots down and make some friends.
Yeah.
It's so funny. Well, when I went to college, I was 6 hours away, no car. Oh, wow. It didn't bother me at all. But when we started looking at schools for my daughter, she was looking at Mizzou because that's where I did my graduate work. And she had gone there. And of course, that's the University of Missouri, Columbia. She had gone to Columbia, Missouri with me almost a year ago. I was doing a media training for dietitians and dietetic students. And she came along to do a little college visit and she loved the campus. She loved the school. But I was like, that's like 7 hours from where we live. I don't know. And that's just as a parent, not because I would be worried, but like that's a long drive if we would just want to like,
sure,
go and see her or have her come home. It's a far distance, So I was like,
yes. You're like, not that far. And your child. So probably what would be the best situation too.
It's hard. I mean, you have to think about they're a different person. And if it's one thing I've learned as a parent, I have my experience and this is how I put it. This is what I think is this is my normal. Melissa's normal. And I understand that that's not everybody's normal, but it's what I know. And my husband has a completely different, it's Mark's normal. And then we have to deal with Sarah's normal. And so I just try to be thoughtful and share my experience, not saying, look, this is how it was for me. This is how it's going to be for you. But just say, this is what I see. This is what I think. You might have a different, opinion or experience. So
sure.
It's fun though.
Which I think you apply that to your, just your business and your podcast and how you educate other professionals as well with your media training. I think you would kind of apply that to all your parts of your life.
That's true. Yeah, it is kind of my personality to kind of be open and honest and vulnerable about, well, this is what worked for me, but that doesn't, you could have a different approach. Done a lot of mentoring with dietitians and just, kind of like, well, this is how my career went, but that doesn't mean that's the same path that you should take, but there are some sort of core themes that, like, hey, if you follow what you're really interested in, you will end up on the path to where you are going and where you're supposed to be going. So, that could look a lot of different ways for different people. So
that's true. And that's, I think in our profession, don't you feel like you have to have that mindset because our profession changes constantly? I mean, you've been in the profession for how many years now?
My first job out of grad school was 93, so 25 years.
Yeah. So, I mean, you probably have seen so many things change in the dietetics profession.
Oh, yes. I feel like a dinosaur. Thank you.
Oh gosh, no. I feel like it's just starting to get good at like 25 years is what I'm at 18. So I feel like, well, it's just kind of starting to get good. Or I feel like maybe I'm more comfortable in that space.
Yeah. Yeah. No, lots has changed. How do I say that? A lot has changed. And yeah, I would say it's all for the best. I can't think of anything that's like, oh yeah, I wish it was like the good old days. I think, back in the day, I think it's very exciting time for dietitians and just the nutrition space. I think there's so many opportunities and, people, the public, consumers, they are paying more attention to nutrition and they're getting all kinds of information and misinformation out in the media and social media, but they're paying attention and they want more information. So that's really exciting.
It is exciting. So kind of speaking of just kind of where you began, how did you get interested in dietetics? And take me through kind of like you said, you had your first job in 93. Let's kind of go back and kind of revisit your journey so far.
Okay. I'll try to be concise about it and you can poke and prod where you want to know more.
Okay.
I would say I got interested in nutrition. I think it just kind of happened in little bits and pieces, but I went to a performing arts high school for ballet and I remembered thinking back, there should be someone here to talk to us about nutrition and food and diets, of course, dieting. And there should be someone here to talk to us about our feelings. So I was a sophomore in high school and it was like going to a boarding school. So, it was basically, you're not living at home, you're living at the school. And so it was a huge change and I was pretty young, but I was kind of a mature kid. I guess I was kind of a goody two shoes, if you will. But I saw a lot of crazy stuff going on around me and I was like, what is happening? And I guess that sort of planted the seed. I mean, I remember being at dinner, we danced, 8 to 10 hours a day. And I remember being at dinner and I loved milk. I was a big milk drinker. And so I had this nice big glass of cold milk and I was drinking it. And my friend, and I say friend, she was actually my friend. There weren't a lot of friends there. But my friend who thought she was helping me said, you would lose more weight if you didn't drink all that milk. And I swear to you, I remember it like it was yesterday being so confused by that. I was like, that's just what? That's strange. Wow. That doesn't even compute. I don't understand. And I knew about calories and stuff, but it just was such a bizarre, thing for me. I just thought, what could be that about milk, So, I just remember little things like that along the way, but now I'm making a long story longer and I was trying not to do that. So, after the dance academy, I went back to normal high school and instead of, becoming a ballerina, I decided I was going to go to college and all that happened kind of fast. So I went to 3 different high schools. I only went to 3 years of high school. And so after my sophomore year, all of a sudden I was a senior. I had to take the ACTs. I had to learn to drive and it was just all kind of a whirlwind. It was very, very,
my gosh.
Yeah. So I was the new girl my senior year. That was not fun. Thank goodness my brother had been there, for a year already. And we ended up graduating together. My brother's so cool and awesome and everybody loved him. So that made my life a little bit more bearable. But anyway, so I was like, okay, I'm going to, just even going to college was a huge shift for me mentally, which sounds weird, but it was the truth that I grew up in an artsy family. It was not like a strange foreign thing for us to think that I might actually pursue a career in the arts. Just a lot of families would be like, whoa, that, I don't know. Mm-hmm. But my family was like, okay, so I like, okay, I'm going to college. What am I going to major in? And I had this great chemistry teacher and I did really well in that subject. And I thought, oh, okay. science, chemistry. I'll go in as a chemistry major planning to go into pharmacy. Well, after a couple of semesters, I was like, this is not what I'm passionate about at all. And I wanted to work with people. So when you combine science and people, the college counselor said, well, how about dietetics? Now, I tell this story and it's true. I literally said, what is that? Isn't that a book by L. Ron Hubbard? I was like, no, that's Dianetics. And I was still like, I don't get it, whatever. But I took a couple classes and I was hooked. So that's how I got interested in nutrition. And then basically I did my undergrad and I went straight into graduate school because even then I knew education was what I really wanted to do. And you hear this a lot. A lot of people are like, yeah, I knew clinical wasn't for me. I didn't really know that clinical wasn't for me, but I just knew that education was where it was at for me. So I went straight on and got my master's in nutrition education. But my first job out of school was a clinical job. I moved to Chicago and started working in South Chicago as a clinical dietitian. And that was an eye opener. That was a very interesting first job. And then I became an outpatient dietitian in the suburbs. And I loved that job. I was there 5 years. I always say that was my favorite job. I got to do, outpatient counseling on a variety of topics. I got to do community programs, corporate wellness. My first day on that job, I was on TV, which is another funny story.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Please tell me that story, because that is so intimidating to be on TV.
It was like, and so it's, this was 1995. I had just gotten married and, still I had a couple years of clinical under my belt, but I was still a very new dietitian. First day on the job, there's a group of about 10 dietitians, all inpatient except for me. I was outpatient. And we were at lunch and the boss comes to the table and says, Chicagoland TV's coming to the hospital. Who's going to do this interview? By the way, the topic was men's health. And we're like, oh, geez, okay, we're all young ladies here. We don't really know about men's health. It couldn't be like diabetes or heart disease or something that we were a little bit, more familiar with. And keep in mind, so I'm in Chicago. So the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, which was the American Dietetic Association, is right here. So, Chicago, third largest media market. TV station's coming. Who's going to do it? And everybody just, instead of just even looking at her and pausing, everybody was like, I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. And I just looked at these dietitians and I was like, I can't believe they're so insubordinate. I can't believe they're saying no to the boss, And I've lightened up a lot since then. But at the time I was just like, this is so wrong. And so I was like, I guess I'll do it. I was like, somebody's got to do it. I'll say yes. I had no idea what I was getting into. And the TV station came. Well, the funny other thing is that, again, it's 1995. So we asked the Academy, which again was ADA at the time, for information to do the interview. And they faxed us information. Okay, so that's a while ago. It was before email and stuff like that. Well, I guess, we weren't really in, full-fledged using email then. But so they faxed it to us. And, I don't remember what the questions were, what the talking points were. I remember I was wearing my lab coat and standing by the salad bar, which doesn't seem, I don't know, it just seems weird. And unfortunately, I swear to God, I have, I've done over 200 live TV interviews in my career. I've done multiple hundreds of radio interviews and taped segments and videos. That's the one segment I think it got ruined in a flood. I can't find that video cassette anywhere. Oh gosh, what I wouldn't give to see that and laugh. But it was pretty fun. I was like, okay.
Was it something that you were like, oh, I really enjoy this?
I don't remember what I felt about it other than, well, someone's got to do it.
That happened.
Yeah. Oh, another day on the job. But I can tell you that I started then doing more print interviews, like so the local newspapers and magazines and a little bit of radio while I was an outpatient dietitian. And I remember thinking, I must have liked it because I remember thinking, oh, how do I do more of this? Now I should back up. In graduate school, I worked at the state extension office. So I did do some newspaper interviews there. So I had a little bit of experience, training from my boss. Yeah, about like this is how you look up credible information. And here's a shout out to Melinda Hemmelgarn. She was my boss at the state extension office, and she's a very well known dietitian who has her own podcast, Food Sleuth Radio. So she's the one who kind of first was like, here's how you do a media interview. So I'm making this story way longer than it needs to be.
No, I love it. It's a part of who you are. So this is great.
So I remember thinking, well, how do I do more of this in my job at a hospital? I didn't know like how do I do this? So I got some mentoring from a dietitian, just a connection through a friend, and I thought her advice was horrible, and so I vowed that I would never do this, and I don't. It's funny. Her advice was horrible, yet it is something that I did end up doing and benefiting from. But I think is the way she put it. Basically, she said, you need to go to like the Chicago Dietetic Association meetings and the Illinois Dietetic Association meetings. You need to become a state media rep and go through that channel. And ironically, so that was, probably around 1997. Well, ironically, I became a state media rep probably around 2007. So like 10 years later, I kind of did that, but in a very circuitous way. But what I needed to hear from her, and what I tell people that I mentor, is, look, this is one way that either I did it or that, you could do it, but it's not the only way. There are other ways. Because what I took away from what she said was, that's how you do it. That's the only way. There's no other way to do this. Which isn't what happened at all. What happened to me was 3 years later, I became the supermarket dietitian at the major grocery chain in Chicago. And having had some media experience, I'm confident is what helped me land that job. Well, once I got that job, I was doing weekly TV segments. It was like just crazy amount of interviews. And, I got official training and, went from being a supermarket dietitian spokesperson for about 3 years, then to being a dairy council spokesperson for 8 years. And that's when I became a state media rep, and then eventually became an academy spokesperson. And so it's like, I always share this visual that I came up with that I see when I became an entrepreneur, and I thought, I don't have like this North Star vision. I don't have like this major goal. I can just see what's in front of me. And I feel like it's like you're driving a car in the dark and your headlights are on, but you can't see past those headlights, but you can see what's there. And you use that information to, do I turn a little to the right? Do I turn a little to the left? Do I swerve here? Do I make a U-E, whatever, to make the best decision you can with the information that you have. And when you keep doing that, and then you turn around and you look at where you came from and where you are now, it all makes perfect sense. But at the time, you're kind of like, where's this lead? Where's this going? Where am I going? What am I doing?
Which you probably thought, like, you probably didn't think, I think media is hard because I think at any waking moment as a dietitian, you could be called for media. And even in a hospital setting, like, people don't realize that it can happen at any time. And even if you don't think you like it, it's probably a good idea to be curious about it.
Yeah. Well, and so you've mentioned a couple times, and maybe because this is something that I share that, again, I'm being completely honest, but it kind of surprises people. I do not love doing media. I talk to a lot of dietitians who love it. They love being on TV. They love that. They love this. And I did it and do it because it's important. So I never really got that. I want to say like, the media high, like the runner's high. I never got that. But I came from a communications background, and when I look at, education is communication. So this is why I love doing communications coaching, media training, speaker training, any kind of nutrition communications training for dietitians, is because, we're all communicators because we're educators. And there are ways to take your skills to the next level and to hone those skills and to be more compelling and to be more concise and to just be a better you and, elevate the visibility of a dietitian, the image of a dietitian, help the public, and get, credible information out there, take that spotlight away from the celebrity experts. And I say, quote unquote, experts,
Yes.
So that's kind of my whole, platform is how do we get more dietitians out there? And so being a trainer is much more fulfilling to me than doing the actual communications myself. Now, of course, I try very hard to do a great job of it because I want to represent our profession well and I want to get accurate information out. But do I love it? No. But I love helping dietitians do it. And if they love it, even better.
Sure. Well, and I think that's a good point because I feel like you had to go through all that to get to this point that you wanted to educate, but to also understand the ins and outs of media to be an expert to educate people on it. But it's not easy. Yeah. It's not an easy thing to do.
It's not easy. And I think a lot of what I bring to my media trainings, this is why I prefer in-person group trainings versus something like an e-course or something virtual. I do a limited amount of one-on-one coaching. I don't really advertise that. I guess the cat's out of the bag now, but because my schedule doesn't really allow for that. But if somebody really wants to work with me, they have a very focused need or goal that I know that I can help them with, I will Skype with them. I'll phone call with them. I've had people come to my house and do, in-person training with me. But I prefer the group dynamic. I'm more of a facilitator. It's in my blood. My dad was that. He was a speech communications teacher, an actor, director, playwright. I grew up watching him. And that's where I love helping people meet their goals, and we learn from each other. And most of my experience is live on camera TV. And I feel like if you can do live on camera TV, those skills will help you on a radio interview, on a podcast, writing an article even, or doing video. So I sort of feel like, okay, if you can do that and you really hone those skills, then those skills are transferable and you can use them in other areas. So I really focus my trainings on those interview skills. So we do mock interviews. We practice my favorite skill, which is bridging, which is, if you don't know and you're listening, it's when you get a question that you don't want to answer it could be, a variety of reasons. It could be, you only have 3 minutes and that's kind of off topic and it's going to take way too much time and you want to stay focused on your topic. It could be there's not a short and simple answer. It could be you don't know the answer. It could be it's confrontational or controversial. So there's a variety of reasons why you may not want to answer that question and go down that road, but you can't just ignore it and just be a talking head. And people watching would be like, that's weird. What is that person doing?
What you just said.
Yeah. Which if you watch some political shows, you will say, oh, they need to learn how to bridge because they're acting like an idiot. Okay, I shouldn't say that. They're making me crazy. Right. So what you learn is how to address the question and then transition to your main point. So a very common example would be, I'm not see the best way to say this. A comment or one of the best examples would be, I don't know, but what I can tell you is this. Now, yes, you're saying you don't know, which could mean I don't know the answer to that, or I don't know about that. It could mean a lot of things. But you're saying what I can tell you is this. What you're saying is, I hear what you're saying. I'm addressing that. That's not as important as what this is, or what you really need to know is this. So it's a really effective technique for communicators to stay focused on topic. And there's a whole reason why that's important versus falling into the Q&A trap that I call. That's what I call it. It's easy for us to do that because we're educators. People ask questions and we give them answers. So it's really tempting for us to just do this Q&A back and forth, and then your 3-minute segment or your 10-minute segment or, radio or whatever is over, and you've shared a lot of random information, but it wasn't concise and coordinated and organized and packaged up in a way for the audience to really benefit from it. So there's a lot that goes into that. And a lot of, some of that can be done not face to face. But what I like to do with my trainings is I give a lot of homework. I have people, fill out questionnaires. I have them, I have a messaging worksheet that I created that has all the bells and whistles from A to Z, like organizing your ideas and putting them in an order that makes sense, that flows well, cutting out the extra information, taking the facts and making them more interesting through stories and analogies and things like that. So there's so much more than meets the eye. And I find that, again, the group in-person trainings is just, that's what I love to do.
And I think we all need different ways to learn. And I guess with the new age of, like you said, how things have changed with webinars and things like that. I feel like the energy from in-person training is what really gets people excited about media too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And there's certainly, webinars are great and e-courses. I put a lot of thought into, I could reach more people. I could help more people if I did an e-course. But I just felt that I would be giving a lower quality product. And I said, you know what? I want to give what I think is the gold standard. And if that means, fewer people have access to it. I mean, there is only one of me, but there's other dietitians who do virtual trainings, and, we need all hands on deck. I can't train every dietitian that's out there. So it's nice that there's a variety of ways to get information and to learn and to build those skills.
How did you, so I know that you said that you did your outpatient, and you focused, I know that you have a passion for diabetes as well.
Yes.
And then I guess I kind of want to know, how did you transition from that outpatient and doing education diabetes into the space where you do speaking and you do trainings and that's kind of a huge leap to kind of transition to that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, yeah. So a lot of stuff sort of happened in the middle that I'll fill you in on, but yes, thank you for mentioning. I love diabetes. And I was at a Chicago mini meeting last night for nutrition entrepreneurs, which by the way is an awesome DPG, as you know. I love nutrition entrepreneurs, DPG. And I was on a panel. There was 5 of us, and we were being interviewed about working with brands, big brands, small brands, and everything in between. And I had, said something like, well, I love diabetes. And it was funny because some people in the audience were kind of laughing. Other people were like, what? And I realized I say this a lot, and my family tells me, Melissa, you can't say that. It doesn't sound right. But it wasn't until I saw the audience's reaction that I just said I love diabetes. I know. But you guys know what I mean. So
yes.
I was, I think it was my first year in that outpatient job. And I covered for a colleague in our Joslin Center for Diabetes. And my boss was like, hey, Michelle's going on maternity leave. I want you to go over there and cover for her. I'm like, okay. Just like when she was like, who's going to be on TV? I'm like, I'll do it, which by the way, she was the best boss ever. I love her so much. And so I covered for this dietitian in the diabetes center. And that's when I realized I love diabetes education. I love working with a team. There was so much to learn. And yet the type of information and the educational aspect was so empowering for the patients. It was like this perfect world of, I get to really help people and really kind of talk about behavior change and feelings and reality, but also have all this like stimulation of the clinical side of my brain that's interested in medications and, blood sugar monitoring and insulin pumps and all the research that comes out. So, and then that team aspect. So I was really hooked then. But after working in that job for 5 years and moving on to the grocery store setting, I still was involved with diabetes. I did diabetes store tours, but I didn't do any more patients one-on-one. And then I worked for the Dairy Council for 8 years. Again, even less diabetes, no patient care. But throughout that whole time, I have always known I will go back to diabetes education in a team environment someday. I know that I will. And I've maintained my certification for 20 years, which I'm very proud of. It's not easy to do if you're not doing direct patient care. No. And even if you are.
Yeah.
So in fact, I share this, pretty openly. The first time I took the CDE exam, I failed it. I didn't really know what I was getting into, and it was hard. So it is a credential or certification that I am very proud of and am very serious about. If I wasn't able to certify, I would say, well, if it's because I'm not seeing patients and that's what is required, I respect that, So after the Dairy Council, that's when I became an entrepreneur. And I like to say I'm the accidental entrepreneur because, as I said earlier, I didn't have a North Star vision. I didn't have this desire to be an entrepreneur. But there were some changes at work and at home that just kind of all came together at the same time to where I needed to be flexible, available. My daughter, who's going off to college, is my stepdaughter. I had adopted her, and I just felt like she needed more of me. And my son was about 2.5 at the time, and I just felt like my hands were really full. And I was like not sure that I could do any more than I was doing, but I needed to be doing more. So something was going to give. And I decided to, with the strong encouragement of my husband, to quit my full-time job. I was fortunate then to get a part-time job in diabetes education, which, again, like hindsight's 2020, that was the perfect opportunity and little carrot for me to leave my full-time job and the security of health insurance and a regular paycheck. And, just having been in a job that I enjoyed for 8 years and going from the known to the unknown, it's a big leap. And so, I did this outpatient diabetes job for a little over a year and, loved it. But again, certain things kind of conspired for me to leave that job and just go completely on my own. And because I love diabetes education, but I didn't want to deal with the business side of it, insurance reimbursement, billing. And I didn't want to be on my own, like in a silo. I want to work with a team. So private practice just really was not an option for me. I mean, I thought about it. My brother-in-law is a physician in a clinic nearby, and I talked to him about maybe having some office hours there. And, in Chicago here, we have a really wonderful dietitian diabetes educator who is like the reimbursement and billing guru. Her name's Marianne Hodorowitz, and she's a friend of mine. I spent over an hour on the phone with her just kind of talking about what would this look like? Why can't I just borrow a room at my, brother-in-law's office, and she walked me through all the legal stuff. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is just daunting. Yeah. So private practices was not an option for me. And so I thought, okay, well then what do I do? And the more I thought about it, and I mentor people on this. I'm like, think about what you enjoy. Think about what your skills are. Write them down on a big piece of paper and see where you can connect those dots. And when I did that, again, thinking I have all these media skills, but it's not my favorite thing to do. But my passion has always been to get more dietitian voices out there. It was like, aha, I will help other dietitians do this. And I thought, well, nobody's really doing this like kind of full time. There are a lot of dietitians who kind of do this on the side. So either nobody cares or it's a great opportunity that I can fill. And that's kind of how the whole media training aspect started. And around that time is when I became an academy spokesperson. So it was interesting because I had a lot of people just seeing me as a spokesperson. And I kept saying, no, I want to train the spokespeople, I think it's been interesting. Like, I feel now that I'm sort of pigeonholed as a podcaster, which I am, and I'm proud of that. But I feel like it's hard to say, wait, what I really like to do is media training. I mean, I like podcasting, but it's kind of hard. Sure. People kind of assume, oh, well, with your media, you just want to be in front of the camera all the time. And I'm like, no, I'll help you be in front of the camera.
Like, no,
no, not really. So,
well, that's good to know about. I mean, I think that's a good thing that you're sharing that, because I would think most people would see you as a podcaster, but I know you more of being the speaker and the media trainer. So I like that you're sharing that part of your story.
Oh, good. Well, I'm glad to know that's how you see me.
Yeah, I do, because I know that I've learned just from, like, you have great resources, like you mentioned, on your website and just your videos. And I remember when you were a media spokesperson and watching, I know when I was starting doing media, that I watched your stuff because it helped teach me before I had good training to do TV.
Oh, good. Okay, that makes me feel good.
I didn't know if you ever knew that.
No,
yeah.
I don't think I did. Well, good. That is why I put it out there, is because I do want it.
Yes.
Because you know how it is, even as a podcaster, I know you can relate to this, is you kind of put your stuff out there knowing some people are just going to judge it, but you're going to help a lot more people than, than hiding it because you don't want to be judged.
Exactly. And you're always going to have, you're always, first of all, your worst critic yourself, but then you're always going to have those people that nudge you and offer their own criticism, but you just have to do it because you are helping the greater good.
Yeah. And hopefully none of that even really is visible to you, know,
yes.
That you don't even have to deal with it. Now, I will say, as a speaker, oh goodness, some of those speaker evaluations are painful.
They are.
Yeah. Which that makes me sound like a horrible speaker. I get consistently excellent ratings, and I'm not trying to boast, but I am really proud of that. Because you put so much work. I mean, I'm much more comfortable doing a 3-minute TV segment than I am doing a presentation. I mean, you've seen me speak. I prefer, like I said, the facilitation, like a workshop setting versus a presentation, but I've used my TV skills to help myself be a better speaker. And that's why I know that it can help, because not every dietitian is going to do on camera TV or videos, or even, media interviews in general, but almost every dietitian is going to do a presentation at some point. So that's what I really feel like, making that transition from, okay, this is how you can be a better speaker. But, it's a lot of work and you put a lot into it. And the reason you're doing it is to help the people in the audience. And constructive criticism is fine. But I've had some comments from people, like the worst one ever was, your dress rides up in the back. And I thought, what? How is that helping me? Oh my God. Now I feel self-conscious about not junk in the trunk, but yeah. So people out there, when you fill out your evaluations, just try to be nice, be constructive, but be nice. But so it is a fine line, like putting yourself out there and sort of having that, I don't want to say grit, but having enough self-compassion and outer shell, tough skin, that you're not going to let those things get in the way of you trying to help other people.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, now then we're talking about this and it's right before Fancy. You're probably like getting nervous. You're like, oh gosh.
No. So, I mean, and this is how I help other dietitian speakers is I'm like, just remember you are helping people. The people in the audience are not there to waste their time. They're not hoping that you screw up. They want it to be valuable. And so if you do your due diligence and think about your audience and make sure you're not trying to cram too much information down their throats and you're making it as interesting as possible and you're really providing value, then you've done your job. And yes, the speaker evaluations, hopefully you can learn from that. It's, I try not to look at it as, oh, I did a good job, pat on the back, or, oh yeah, I really screwed up, because I have a pretty good feeling about the work that I put into it and how it went. Some days I'm more on than others, and that's just life. But if I get a good night's sleep, I have a better chance of being a dynamic speaker. And I have a pretty good feeling when I'm done, and I don't get those speaker evaluations for sometimes a month. So I have a pretty good feeling. Do I feel good? Did I put enough work into this? Did I try to make it fun? Did I provide enough value? Did the audience seem engaged? And then the speaker evaluations, is kind of like one piece of that puzzle.
Kind of like the wrapping up to move you forward to the next experience.
Yeah. And again, like, what could you learn from it? And that's what I try to think of when I fill out a speaker evaluation is, is there anything that I think I could say to them that would help them do better next time? Something that, they may not be aware of that they're doing, that if they were more aware of, again, not to make them too self-conscious, but, I've done this before where I didn't realize I was holding a piece of paper, and my mom happened to be in the audience, and she's like, why were you holding that paper? Because I talk with my hands. So you add a piece of paper to that. It's not good. And I'm like, oh yeah, how distracting, and just something like that. Okay. Make sure there's not a piece of paper in my hand, or, anything.
That's helpful. Yes, yeah. Absolutely. So when you talk about, like you said, you don't want to, your podcasting is just part of who you are and what you do. What do you want your listeners to get from your podcast, and how do you kind of approach how you pick your guest?
Yeah, well, I started the podcast because I really wanted to clear up misinformation, not necessarily in the news, but just out there. And so I don't know if you know this, I think you do, but a lot of people don't, but I had a podcast that I started with another dietitian. We were co-hosting 4 years ago, and that lasted about 6 months. She got real busy, and we hadn't yet gotten to the point. We wanted to interview experts, and we hadn't gotten to that point yet. And as you know, the technology for that is a whole other layer. So I thought, I'm not done with this yet. I want to learn more, and I really want to interview people, because that, in my gut, I felt like, I don't want to just talk all the time. Who wants to listen to me? I want to talk to interesting people, like, hard on yourself. But it just wasn't that interesting to me. So, and originally I thought with this co-host, we kind of had different approaches to nutrition. So I thought, if we're both wearing our big girl panties, we can handle, like, maybe having a little bit of, healthy
banter,
banter, right. Like, make it a little interesting. It just kind of didn't happen. But so then I put some, effort and time into learning more about podcasting and thinking about what I would want my show to be, and interview based and so on, and launched this podcast, Sound Bites, about 3 years ago. And, my whole, it's interesting. You kind of get out there and you do it, and it evolves over time. And that could be for podcasting. It could be for blogging. It could be anything where you're kind of developing your voice and building your brand. But initially I thought, I want to talk about the science, but I want it to be helpful for people. And I want to kind of set the record straight on some things. And so I just thought, okay, well, what topics am I interested in? I'm interested in protein. I'm interested in agriculture. I'm interested in diabetes, maybe a little bit about weight or family nutrition, or maybe a little bit about eating disorders. I was kind of dabbling with some of that. And over time, I just realized, certain topics are more interesting to me than others. It's still a variety, but my tagline is that, like I said, I interview experts, many of which are dietitians, but they could be researchers, authors, exercise physiologists, food ethnographers, food historians, doctors, kind of any expert in the health and wellness field, or I should say food and nutrition, primarily. And I delve into the science, the psychology, and the strategies behind good food and nutrition, which is really a parallel to my business, Sound Bites, which, was where I promote sound science, smart nutrition, and good food. And so what I'm trying to do is this trifecta of, it's got to be science-based, evidence-based, credible information. It has to be like realistic, actionable information and tips that people could, like, hey, I could try that, or I could do that. And it has to kind of celebrate the enjoyment of food. It has to be about good food, or it has to be, enjoying your food with health in mind. So I just feel like all three of those aspects are really important. And some guests and some topics and episodes lend themselves more to the science part. I like the psychology part. Talking to like food and ag econ people is really when I start getting all interested, like consumer insights and, people say this, but this is what they're doing is fascinating to me. Especially having been, the beginning of my career, the first decade or so, dealing with patients, clients, customers, people, like directly, and then kind of going a step away and dealing, with health professionals, peers, and the media. I miss that direct connection to people, because I feel like a lot of what we hear and see in media and social media is really, I don't want to say like, how do you say, like not infighting, or like, it's like in a bubble. Like, I just don't feel like that's what the average person thinks about every day.
I would agree with you on that.
I don't think the average person walking down the street cares about keto or any of this other stuff. However, having said that, I mean, I know a couple people who are doing it. So yeah, it's not that it's, I'm trying to reach more of, I hate saying like the average Joe, but I don't know another way to say it, but like more of the typical average person who has like, gee, should I buy organic produce because of the pesticides? Or, do I need to worry about GMOs? Or, I just did a podcast on grains, which I thought I'm going to really have to explain to people why this is not a boring topic, because the woman I interviewed is so fascinating. It's like my longest episode. I sometimes do these hidden tracks, and her hidden track is like 30 minutes long because she kind of gives me a chemistry lesson. But Julie Miller-Jones is a researcher, international speaker, one of the most fascinating people I've ever met, PhD in nutrition. And it's like people like that I could talk to all day long and say, well, what about this? Well, what about that? And tell you what, she makes the topic of grains very interesting. Which you would think, grains, whatever. I don't know.
But it's what people are that's the kind of like the GMOs, organic grains. They hear all these buzzwords, but they really don't pay enough attention to it to understand it. So that's why I think your podcast is great, because it does help people that are just having those thoughts in their head try to understand how it would work well for them and their family.
Yeah. And a fair number, as a podcaster, this, we never really know how many subscribers we have. We can see our downloads, but we don't know how many subscribers there are. There's no way to tell. And unless you survey your audience, which I do at least once a year, but even then, you don't know for sure what's your demographic breakdown. I think a fair number of my listeners are dietitians. So I've always struggled with that in my own business. I feel like I'm speaking to my peers, dietitians and other health professionals, but I'm also speaking to the public. And I feel like sometimes that can get a little confusing, or, I don't want to share too much scientific jargon because I need to be more clear. But at the same time, I think that the people listening to my podcast or reading my blog might have a higher level of nutrition interest and maybe be familiar with those terms. But I think at the end of the day, we're dietitians, we're still consumers, and, the public, the consumer, again, might have a really high level of interest in nutrition. So I feel like if people like what I'm putting out, they'll listen. And if they don't, they won't. And I try to leave it at that.
And that's good. The perfect way to be, because again, like, you're doing your best to help the public. So that's all that matters.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. I figure, absolutely. If they're interested in it, these are topics that I'm interested in. And again, as you know, if you're interested in it, then you can make it interesting to others, but if you're not interested in it, nobody's going to care.
That's very true. Again, that energy is contagious.
Yeah.
So what is, besides your presentation coming up, what are some things that you're kind of working on or looking forward to working on in the future for yourself?
Well, that's a good question. I'm so focused on this, like, next week, with my daughter going off to college. Getting your daughter to college. Yes. I have some fun business trips coming up, which is great. I know you enjoy going on farm tours, as do I. Nice. And I would say that that's just one of my favorite things to do, is to go on these farm tours, whether it's, a crop farm or an animal farm, and to learn more about food production, farming practices, modern day farming. And there's so much science and geeking out I get to do on that. And then kind of bringing it full circle to the food aspect. I'm not a real culinary person, but I do cook and I eat. So, those things still do matter to me. And I feel like that's also what I try to convey. I have a Do More with Dinner initiative where I'm like, hey, how can we do more with dinner, whether it's making a healthier recipe or incorporating more fruits and vegetables or cutting down on food waste, just things that I think everybody sort of, goes through in their day-to-day life. Like, what do I make for dinner? But without taking it to the level of creating a recipe and taking a pretty picture of it. It's not my thing. Mm-hmm. But I'm turning 50 soon. So one of the things I'm working on is personal. I want to do a ballroom dance competition. It was supposed to be before my birthday, but I have to do a different one now because I had a business conflict. So it'll be shortly after I turn 50 where I'm supposed to be doing this ballroom dance competition. So that's going to be fun. And yeah, I'm looking forward to kind of wrapping up 2018. It's been a great year. But I have to kind of see what I want 2019 to look like, because this has been like a different year, just trying to make the transition with my daughter leaving and, sure. So, trying not to travel as much, which as a speaker and a trainer and attending farm tours, there is quite a bit of travel. some places are more exciting than others, but but that's where I get to see a lot of great speakers that I end up, you had asked this question and I don't know if I fully answered it, but that's where I get a lot of my podcast guests is I see them speak at some of these conferences or on these farm tours. And I'm just fascinated by their depth of knowledge in a certain area. And I just know that I can just sit down with them at the microphone and, virtually and just say, okay,
let's talk it out.
Give us a lowdown. Like you geek out on your stuff and we can benefit from it. So that's what I really love to do.
That sounds exciting. I would never guess that you're turning 50. So that's I love that. And I loved hearing dietitians have other goals besides dietitian stuff, because I think it's good to have, personal goals, because you need those too to help you stay well-rounded.
Yeah. Hashtag goals.
Yeah. Hashtag goals. Well, I answered you. I absolutely enjoyed all that you shared with me. And I hope that, my listeners do reach out and kind of check out your website and check out all the great information you have on your website, as well as listen to your podcast, because you are a wealth of information that all dietitians should be tapping into.
Well, thank you so much. Yeah, I do have, as you said, I have a lot of free information about communications. On my blog, there's actually a section. If you go to the blog page, and you scroll down to the categories, there's a how-to series for dietitians, and they're kind of evergreen. So, anything from pitching the media to should you speak for free or not. There's some stuff in there about podcasting and videos. I try to add to it as often as I can. And I'm also, I hate to put a teaser out there, but I'm working on other content in that vein that I want to share with dietitians as well. And so definitely connect with me on social media, reach out to me. I love to help anybody who is trying to get their dietitian voice out there.
Absolutely. And I'll put all your links in the show notes as well, so people can find you on all your social media outlets too. So I appreciate our conversation. I always love to interview the podcast lady who got me into podcasting, because that's so true.
I'm so happy to hear that. Thank you.
Well, I have some fun questions for you before I let you go, since you answered all the hard ones. So share with me some of your favorite foods that you enjoy.
Now, this is the hard. Those were the easy questions.
I know. That's what everyone says.
Oh, gosh. So, I mean, everybody knows I like brownies, especially at breakfast. So that's something everybody knows. You know what? I love pepperoni pizza, sushi, cheese, sharp cheddar cheese.
Mm-hmm.
Those
sound delicious.
Those things that come to mind.
You have all those for breakfast?
No. And I don't, it's not, it's like a dream of having a brownie for breakfast. I don't do that very often. I have, but I try not to.
I think on your 50th birthday, you should.
Yeah, there you go. Well, that is kind of what happens if we do have, birthday cake, or, my kids know, you just make me a pan of brownies for my birthday or Mother's Day. I'm good. But then that is when I do end up having it for breakfast, because we have it.
Do you have a favorite beverage or beverages that you enjoy?
So this one's a little easier to answer. This is a strange thing about me. People who know me really well know this and make fun of me. If you see me at a conference or, fancy or whatever, and we're in a session or we're at a restaurant, I like a lot of beverages. So I'll be that person. I've met a couple other people like this. I will have a glass of water. I will have a Diet Pepsi. I will have a Chardonnay, and I might even have a decaf coffee. Yes, all at the same time. I'm kind of strange and right now, I've got a thing of water. Of course, I always have to have water when I'm podcasting, and a Diet Pepsi and a decaf coffee.
You like options.
I just like my liquids.
You're always hydrated. That's good.
I guess so. Yeah.
Do you have a favorite color or colors?
I would have to say orange. So my brand colors are orange, red, and green. And the orange is something that like was my school mascot color in high school and also a college one. And it's a color that when I wear it, I get a lot of compliments, and not a lot of people wear orange. And so I like, wow, whenever I wear orange, I get compliments. So I just started wearing it more, and yeah, it's a happy color for me.
I like that. Well, that makes sense now of where that comes from on your website.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you'll see like almost all of my media images, like especially TV, I'm wearing red, like, or a version of red. And it's because it's funny. One of my first media trainers told me not to wear red, like, white, we know white and like stripes and busy patterns, not good on camera, but somebody had said not red. But I wore it one time and I just thought, wow, I look a lot better in red than I do in like blues or, other colors. So yeah, you'll notice like a lot of my media shots now where I'm wearing red.
I'll have to pay attention to that. I like red. I think it looks good on TV and media. Do you have a favorite scent or smell?
I just like clean smelling things. I hate it when like I'm on a flight or I'm in an enclosed space and somebody's wearing like a really powerful perfume or cologne because I feel like, I'm going to get nauseous. Like I tend to get motion sickness anyway. So in a plane or a bus or something, I'm just like already like, I need fresh air. So yeah, I like the smell of fresh air.
Just fresh air. That's I think that I always keep that in mind when I travel, like not to have anything that's too overpowering, because it's hard on some people. And what brings you joy in life?
Well, my family. Yes, they're a source of stress, but they really do. I gotta be honest. I'm not gonna lie. But they bring me so much joy and comfort. Like they make me laugh. I'm kind of, I don't want to say I'm a little high strung, high energy. Like, yeah, like I don't want to be negative, but I know I run a little high. Okay. I run a little high, but I'm not type A. Okay. I'm maybe a B plus. Like, so, cause I'm not like perfectionistic or control. I have a lot of energy, and like, I'm not that person to be like sitting on the couch watching a bunch of TV. Now I love movies. I love videos, but I would choose a lot of other things before that. So they get me to sort of like slow down and have fun and laugh. And I need that. My husband's always cracking jokes. My daughter is the most hilarious person in the family. I'm really worried about when she leaves because, oh my gosh, she just cracks me up so much. So yeah. And I just feel like when I'm stressed out and having a little trouble breathing, I just like, my family gives me so much comfort. And so when I'm irritated with them, I just remind myself that they're really there for me, and they get me, and they might tease me about certain things, and get frustrated with me as well. But they are there for me, and that brings me joy.
Well, and I can see that in the photos that you post and all the things that you share in your social media with your family. You have a beautiful family.
Well, thank you. I'm very, very blessed. I was an older quote unquote mom. As I said, I adopted my daughter from my husband's first marriage, and this is both of our second marriage. And when I had my son, I was almost 40 years old. And so, yeah, I waited a long time. And I think that's part of why, like with my daughter going off to college, I haven't had her for 18 years. I think, I can only imagine some parents, it just might seem as more of like, okay, we've had this whole journey, and it's not that I'm not ready for her to leave. I am, but I think I would feel like I've only had 11 years with her. So it feels like, thank God my son is only 10, because I feel like I need more time, and I try to make the most of that time. And that kind of comes back to me becoming an entrepreneur. Was really because I had waited so long to be a parent. And I mean, I don't mean to be like cryptic about all the changes going on, but it was just enough to like make me stop and think, I have this opportunity now to be present. As scary as it was for me to walk away from my full-time job, I knew that I had to sort of like just walk through that fear, and that it was the right thing for me to be more present, with my family. And I'm not judging what other people do or their choices. It just was because of everything that had happened. Like I just had to do it, and I knew that I wouldn't regret it. I knew it wasn't going to be easy. But that I needed to do that. So I'm glad that I did. And, who knew I would enjoy doing the media training and the podcasting and all the social media stuff that I do. And I will say I have met so many people like you that has been such an unexpected benefit of getting involved as like, an academy spokesperson, or working with I was on the Nutrition Entrepreneurs Board. I was a speakers and media chair for several years, like just really getting to know colleagues of ours across the country and becoming friends. That has really been wonderful and unexpected. And
I think you need that as an entrepreneur, because you are kind of on your own. Mm-hmm. So it's great to have those unexpected friendships that you never would have gotten if you wouldn't have done it.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
And definitely. Being with your family, which is very important.
Yeah. Definitely.
Well, thank you so much for all your time today and all your knowledge you've shared. And I look forward to your presentation at Fancy and all the things that are coming up for you.
Thank you so much. I look forward to seeing you there. And thank you for just reaching out and asking me to be on your show. It's a great show, and you're doing a lot of great work. You're helping a lot of people. And hopefully the stories and information that I've shared will help others as well.
Thank you so much. Have a good day.
Thank you. You too.
If you are attending Fancy this week, make sure to attend Melissa and Kate with Dietitian Connections session on podcasting. I know it's going to be amazing. And like Melissa said, she offers a ton of free resources on her website when it comes to all things nutrition communications. If you'd like to get more involved in this area of dietetics, her resources are something you must tap into. My website, AnnElizabethRD.com, is where you can read my latest blog post on the Nutritional Noshes blog that houses all the stories of my current adventures, food I am eating and noshing on, and the jams that are making up my music playlist of the week. I might also share a recipe that I'm attempting to cook in my kitchen. And as always, I like you to know what I'm loving right now. You can find all my previous podcasts, show notes, and links to things we talked about during all my conversations with these inspiring humans. I hope you love to read, because I have an awesome book that you can purchase from my website. And I hope that we can connect more by joining forces on our social media sites, and find me on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and Pinterest at AnnElizabethRD. Remember to be great always, find the joy in each day, and to start a conversation that truly matters.